So that's milk products. Let's talk about vitamins, and we'll talk about prescription drugs at the same time. And this brings us into an area that includes cosmetics and toiletries, but I will speak about them separately also, which is that according to the letter of the law, any type of object which the chametz inside of it is not what we call roy lechilat kelav, that a dog would not eat. In other words, if you had some alcohol and the dog wouldn't eat the alcohol because it's terrible tasting, right? So that's not considered food. Because we have a refined palate, so we won't eat certain things that are food, but we won't eat them. We just don't like them, right? Certain things each one of us like and dislike. But a dog will eat just about anything as long as it's food, right? He might not eat a rock, but he'll eat food, no matter, even if it's somewhat spoiled. And if a dog would eat it, then we consider it chametz, if it's made from chametz. If a dog won't eat it, then it would not be chametz. So this applies to a number of the objects in the areas of pharmaceuticals and toiletries, which is that most of them are made in a way that there's not chametz. Now, of course, there are some that actually have real chametz in it, but some of them, the chametz, which is in like the alcohol base, for instance, that a lot of things are made from, are not something a dog would eat. You try tasting it, and you'll see why. Right? Try tasting your perfumes or your sprays that you use. It tastes terrible, right? And a dog would know that, and a dog would not eat it. However, while that is the letter of the law, the custom is that we're strict on Pesach, and we buy all of these items, be it vitamins. We try to get all of our pharmaceuticals, right? Even the ones that we have prescriptions for, right? Regular drugs that we use regularly. And as well as all our cosmetics and toiletries, we try to get them all kosher for Pesach.
How do you do that for
You just have to go to the pharmacist and ask them, and they almost always will have one manufacturer that makes them that are. Now, what happens if you can't? So let's say you go and you find out that that a certain pill that you take is made with has cornstarch in it, which you can't use. So that if it's really the case and the doctor prescribes it and you need to take it, then you are allowed to take it. Because as I said, the letter of the law is that these items are permissible because the chametz that's inside of them are bitter tasting, taste bad, like a pill. If the doctor prescribes an antibiotic pill and you try chewing that pill, it tastes terrible. You won't do it again. So a dog also wouldn't do it again. So according to the letter of the law, that's not chametz, even if it's made from something like kitniyot or some chametz. But nevertheless, we try to get things that are not chametz. So how does that apply? So with vitamins, if you have a requirement from a doctor to take vitamins, the doctor says you need vitamins. Therefore, for you, vitamins are medicinal. They're medicine. And you can't get them kosher Pesach. You would be allowed to take them. They weren't, but that's if you really need them. If you're taking them because you choose to take them, you should get kosher for Pesach for sure. And if you can't get kosher for Pesach, you probably should not take them for 1 week. Again, that's not if they're required. Never fool around with your health. If your doctor tells you to take pills, do the best. Go to a pharmacist who's knowledgeable in these areas. Ask them for the pill to be kosher for Passover. If they can't, and the doctor says that you need that pill, then you take the pill anyways.
Is there a kosher for Passover cost to that for kids?
If you go to Ellen's Pharmacy, they have something kosher.
There may be.
Ellen's Pharmacy, yeah.
But remember, something like cough syrup would be a perfect example of a pharmaceutical that does taste good. So that would be chametz. So you want those are things you have to stay away from. Like very often a rabbi will ask you, when you ask them about a particular thing, they'll ask you, how does it taste? And often they'll put flavoring in it so that, like children, like Flintstone vitamins, right? They taste good. Right. So you couldn't use that on Pesach because they taste good, unless they were chametz free. Right? So that's an example. If a doctor said you need these vitamins, or you could get very sick, so then you could take vitamins, but you should take them that don't taste good, because then the chametz is considered as if it's not there. That's really the basis of how it works. You also purchase them before Pesach, so that it would be bottled as well. Right? It would be inconsequential. Yes.
I give my daughter vitamin D drops, which you mentioned is chametz.
Yes.
I'm going to give them to her anyway because she's a toddler and she needs them. If I can't find it kosher Pesach, because you said that vitamin D is chametz, right?
Correct.
So does that present, usually what I do is I put a drop in her milk. Does that present a problem for my dishes?
Yeah, it also really, to be honest, it presents a problem with you giving it to her.
Does it?
Because you're not allowed to get any benefit from chametz. You're not, right? And that would be an example of it. If a doctor says that your daughter needs this, or she will get sick, and if you don't give it to her for a week, it's bad for her. It really is bad for her. So then, we would have to do our best to try to find one, and then, because it's necessary for her health, she'd be allowed to. But if it's less than that, and we can't fool ourselves, then either we don't use it, we find an alternative, because often things like vitamins, which can be very helpful, and doctors may even prescribe them, if you would ask the doctor, what happens if I don't take it for a week? Right? They'll probably tell you nothing. Nothing will happen. Right? It's different than, for instance, an antibiotic. If you don't take an antibiotic every day for a week, then you may as well not take it, because if you skip 48 hours, they'll tell you 24, but it's really about 48, it becomes useless. You lose all of the benefit, and then you have to start all over again. But most other drugs are not that way. But you don't mess around with when it comes to a doctor prescribing medication to you, and you need it, and you can't get it kosher Pesach, you have to ask somebody. You can't.
Should I be looking for kosher Pesach insulin as well? Because it's an injectable. It's not something that I.
No, that's totally different.
That's completely. That
Yeah,
doesn't,
that's different.
fall into it?
Because that's not, you're not eating it. That's not food. It's not doesn't taste like food.
All right,
Nobody would
I
eat
don't
that.
eat toiletries or cosmetics either.
Well, so toiletries and we'll talk about it in a moment.
Okay.
I'll explain it.
What about
Now,
inhalers?
the inhalers and air fresheners are all fine.
When I say an inhaler, I mean like for
Right, I
asthma.
understand. But all of those types of things are fine. Even though there are many air fresheners that have an alcohol base, you're also allowed to use them. Right? Because remember, it's not just the eating of chametz we can't do. We're not allowed to make benefit from chametz. So if we eat the chametz or we spray the chametz, it's still using chametz for our benefit, right? But there are certain things like that, which is the purpose of this class, to tell you that have been investigated are not an issue.
So those should be purchased before then.
Well, anything that we've purchased before that's questionable, that has, as we just discussed.
Does CORE have a list on their site?
Yes, the list should be out. If it's not today, then maybe tomorrow. Then probably by tomorrow. Okay, now, cosmetics. Cosmetic and toiletries are really very similar when it comes to this. There are lists that you will find of cosmetics and toiletries that are kosher for Passover, and it is preferable to use them because we don't have to use all of these toiletries and cosmetics. Some we do, but in general we don't have to use all the ones that we have. Very often when it comes to toiletries and cosmetics, if you look on your lists that you can find in the COR and other places, and it's on there, you can use them. You don't have to get a new one. You can use what you have, except for lipstick. Because lipstick, of course, you put on your mouth, and you've also put it on your mouth when you had just ate chametz, because who thinks about it, right? And therefore, your lipstick stick could actually have chametz on it, but you just have to use a new one, right? And then you can go back to using the old one after Pesach. It's only a week. But the other items, the work as follows. It's always preferable to use these things. As I said, we are strict on Passover. That means we're not following the law. The law is that you can use these toiletries because if you would break open your banned roll-on deodorant and let a dog smell it, they're not going to eat it. It tastes terrible. It's a horrible, vile taste. So it would be, according to the letter of the law, permissible to use. It's just that we really try to be strict. So if you can go out to the store and buy these things, so you buy them. If you're financially not able to, if there's some other reason, then you don't. The areas where you should try to be stricter would be in the area of cosmetics that contain actual chametz, beer shampoos, some of the vitamin addition shampoos and things like that will sometimes have chametz. Some will have wheat germ. They have all these additions put in. But basic shampoos are usually not an issue. But you can find many, many, many shampoos, deodorants, all of these things kosher for Passover. The one thing to keep in mind with deodorant is that while stick deodorant is all kosher for Passover, right, the real stick that they have, stick deodorant cannot be used on Shabbos and holidays, right, on actually Yom Tov and Shabbos, because it's called merachik. You're rubbing it in, right, by rubbing it, and that we're not allowed to do on Shabbos and holidays. So therefore, while those are always usable on Pesach, it's not usable on 4 or 5 days out of the 8. So it's sort of a waste. So you need to look for other forms that if you try to use kosher for Pesach. There are many ones that are, you look on the COR and they'll have a list of regular, antiperspirants, regular deodorants that are kosher for Passover with no certification. But they're made with stuff that happens to be kosher for Passover, and therefore we can use that. Ones that are not, you're allowed to use. It's just preferable to use ones that are, and ones that have actual wheat and that kind of stuff in there, we should certainly stay away from. So in these, all these areas of toiletries, cosmetics, right, you really should try to get the items that are kosher for Passover, because it's our custom to be strict, but you don't have to. So if there's an area you need for some reason, let's say you can't find kosher antiperspirant, and you want to get an antiperspirant, so then if you couldn't find one, then you could buy one that wasn't. But if you can find one, even if it's a bit more expensive, you should really consider buying it. If you can't, you can't.
What about perfume?
Yeah.
The perfume is exactly the same. Perfume is not edible. Try tasting it. You won't like it, and your dog won't like it. But it's preferable to get ones that are kosher. Many of them are. I think all the Ralph Laurents are. I think there's a lot of Mary Kay's, a lot of Avon's, and there's other brands. Yves Saint Laurent, I think, also. You can look on any of the certifying kosher companies. Deodorants, perfumes sold in Canada are the same perfumes sold in the U.S. They're not under separate license. So therefore, while sometimes you can't rely on an American certification because they may be manufactured differently in Canada, when it comes to perfumes and bath waters, this type of thing, it's all the same. It's imported, and then it's bottled here, but it's the same. So it would be the same if you found it in the U.S.
What about soap, the hand soap or the pump soap in it?
So soap is another example. By definition, soap does not have to be kosher at all. Not at all kosher. Because soap is what's called in Jewish law nosein tam yifgam. That is, it gives the purpose of soap is that it spoils food, right? It cleans and it tastes bad. So when you wash your dishes with soap, if you leave the soap on the dishes and you taste the dish, it's terrible. Well, let me explain. For anything, even during the year, you don't need kosher soap. However, the custom is to be strict, again, since so many of them are kosher and so many of them are kosher for Passover. But literally, regular dish soap, without all this extra stuff you might find in some of them, are kosher. Because soap, like I said, soap destroys food. Soap doesn't enhance food. And then the Jewish law says something that destroys food does not have to be kosher at all, and you can use it. However, it is definitely the custom to use kosher soap and to use kosher for Passover soap.
But soap for your hand?
For anything, because of you're not supposed to use chametz, right? So when it comes to the soaps, you also have to be careful though with same dishwasher soap, dishwashing soap, all of it. They will all be the same. They can all, they're all usable. But we try to be strict. That's all. Remember, we're only dealing with a week, right? Not too many. You don't do customarily. We don't do wash on Pesach, right? Unless it's something that's a necessity, like diapers or something like that. Otherwise, we don't usually do it. So you don't need to buy it, right? We have a tendency of making sure that there's nothing that a human being would want that we don't have available on Pesach. We're not like that a week before, the month before, but we happen to be like that on Pesach. And you often realize it's a week. So for 1 week, I won't have potato chips. Right? For 1 week, I won't have barbecue sauce. I'll live without it, because the barbecue sauce is $10 instead of 99 cents. So we won't have barbecue sauce. But people tend to do it. So I told you about air fresheners. Let's talk about pet food. Pet food, people think it's not an issue because that pet's not Jewish. But the issue is that you own the pet. The pet's not like a human being. Right? You don't own your husband. You don't own your wife. You own animals. That's your pet. You own that animal. Therefore, you are required to take care of it. And therefore, anything that you do for that animal is for your benefit because you are required to take care of it. And therefore, any food that you give to a pet anytime during the year cannot be something that we're not allowed to get any type of benefit from, like milk and meat. We're not allowed to get benefit from milk and meat. So therefore, one has to be careful during the year. But on Pesach, there's all types of chametz in dog food. There's all types of chametz in different types of food that for animals, so you have to be extremely careful. Most people suggest, as much as the doctors don't like it, the veterinarians don't like it, is that you give the animal people food for a week. It depends on the animal, but most of them will survive. and get through the week. And there is kosher for Passover dog food. There is cat food. It's a lot of money. It's a rare item, but there is, and you can use it. You can buy it. But you can't use non-kosher for Passover because it is very often chametz. One area that was common to find kosher Pesach was bird food, because even though it's made out of grain, the company Hart's Mountain when it was created, was owned by Orthodox Jews, and they had everything was kosher and kosher for Passover, but it's no longer owned by them, so there's no guarantee anymore as to what's put into the bird foods that you buy. But there are many things like there's certain types of actual seeds that you can buy for a bird, that like millet. Millet is kosher for Pesach, so you can give it to a bird. You can give them a millet stick. Like they have these sticks, you can give that to a bird if you have a bird. So one should not treat pet food lightly. And I don't go and say, I'm going to sell my dog to my neighbor, and my neighbor will come over and feed the dog chametz every day. It's a sham. Right? If we treat Judaism like a sham, our children will notice that very quickly. And that's how they'll look at it. So we should be careful with that. Plasticware. So plasticware is fine. That's like plastic cutlery. You don't need kosher for Passover cutlery. There is kosher for Passover cutlery. It comes from Israel. The same people do the paper plates and others. You're welcome to buy it. It's always nice to support Jewish causes. But if it's more expensive, you may want to cut back in that area. Yeah.
If we have plastics at home and they're open, should we buy fresh for Passover?
Of what?
If we have like plastic plates or glasses at home that are
Yeah,
open.
if you keep them in your kitchen, you should buy a new package, because anything can have gotten into it. Because we don't think about it, right? You take the package of plates, put it on your Shabbos table, and start putting out plates. Anything could fall into it. You're eating a cookie at the same time. We don't think about it, right? Because it's only 1 week that this is no good. It's not like, it's not going to be treif in there. It's just not going to be necessarily good for Pesach.
So all the napkins need to be
Yeah,
changed?
that's what I'm
Napkins are fine.
Paper napkins have to be a certain, like for the Pesach napkins?
No, paper napkins are fine.
Do you need a new package though or anything? Or if they're
Yeah,
on the table?
all of those items, anything that you would keep in your kitchen that you would leave open, it has to have a new item for Pesach. Quinoa, right? That's what it's called. It's a type of a wheat-like product that people have been using lately. It is permissible. You can use it. Yes, it is not. However, that's not the flour. Quinoa flour is quinoa itself. Quinoa flour is processed, and therefore it has to be kosher for Passover. You will find quinoa kosher for Passover, and you can buy that, because you don't want to buy a non-kosher for Passover one because it may have something else in it. But you will find kosher for Passover in the stores, and it is permissible to use.
During the year, does it have to have a hesher on it? If you use it during the year?
Not if it's in a raw form, in an original raw form. It would be like buying a stalk of wheat. That'd be fine.
Made my week.
Okay, more. Yeah. Any other things that comes to mind that you want? Yes.
What about if a baby is, like, well, she's not a baby, my grandchild, she's 2.5, and she has rice milk and soy milk because she has a milk allergy. So for a week, does that mean she must just have water and juice?
Now, when it comes to feeding an infant formula, you can feed an infant formula either that is kosher for Passover or that is made from soy, which is kitnias. We don't use soy itself. So therefore, they're allowed to use it because they're a baby. That's what they eat. You have to keep the bottle separate from your other dishes because you can't benefit from the kitniut because we're Ashkenazim. So you can't have that, but if the baby needs it, you can do it. So you have bottles for the baby, you have a brush for him, you wash it, you do it all separately from your other stuff. It's totally kosher. It's just the baby doesn't have to keep that extra piece. And therefore, we allow them to use kitniut. And it'll say on the containers, if you look at the kosher Pesach ones, some of them will say kosher Pesach, some will say kosher for Pesach for Svardim. Svardim eat kitniut. And in this case, for babies, you're allowed to give that to them.
And would you wash in the same sink, the bottle? But that'll make the sink. Like,
we have to wash it separate from other things. So it has to be in a Pesach sink. You have to do it separately. So if you have a tub that you put in your sink, you would not do it in that tub. If you would do it, otherwise you'd do it separately from everything else. You'd hold the bottle when you clean it, right, and then deal with it, or buy enough for a week. Then I have to clean them at all until after Pesach. Okay. Any other types of foods like this?
Juice is not from concentrate. Now, when we were in Calgary, of course, which is a much smaller community, we were told we could buy things like Tropicana ahead of Pesach again.
Right.
And
The problems with not from concentrate juices is the preservatives that they put in. So you have to buy kosher Passover ones. Tropicana, Minute Maid, they both have kosher Passover ones. You can find them in the store probably already. So it should be pretty easy to find. It used to be that the concentrate was all kosher for Passover, even if it didn't say so. It's changed again because of the conglomerates, because you don't know what else they make. Some of them will make mixed drinks and freeze them right in the same place. They just don't sell them to you. They sell them to, for adult whatever. But you don't know what else there might be in there in the manufacture. So, but it used to be when I was a kid you could use concentrate, but you can't anymore.